Hi, my name is Chris Englebert with Englebert Financial Advisors in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I want to talk to you as far as township managers, borough managers, finance directors about my program called RFP Referee and why you need it for your defined benefit pension plans. So let me give you a little background on who we are. I'm a registered investment advisor and I have extensive experience working with municipalities, literally over 36 years in the defined benefit pension arena. I used to do a lot of consulting where we actually had 10, 50, $75 million defined benefit plans. And we were the consultant to those plans. And we were hiring money managers. We were writing investment policy statements. We were doing performance reports and audits, etc. But in our practice now, we do manage small defined benefit plans, but we also have this program called RFP Referee. We do a lot of 457 plans and a lot of drops. We do a lot of rollovers from 457 plans and drops. But specifically today, I want to talk to you about our RFP Referee program. And I came up with this idea a couple of years ago, talking to one of my township managers. And she had used a engineering firm, and they didn't win the RFP to build their building, but she ended up hiring them to oversee the RFP program for building the township building. And I said, wow, what do you think would be an idea for doing that for pension plans? She said it would be a great idea. So we've now been doing this program for almost 4 years, RFP Referee. Basically, what we do is we recuse ourselves from applying or providing pension benefit consulting services for the plan. So we recuse ourselves and we act as an independent advisor to you, the township manager, finance director, your pension committee, whomever, and we really go in depth in writing the RFP, managing the responses, we advertise it for you, and we make sure that all of the responses meet the technical requirement as far as answering the RFP. And why are we so good at this? Because I've literally answered hundreds of RFPs myself. I know all of the ins and outs. I know all the questions that were asked in RFPs. A lot of times you get a request for proposal from a investment firm and it looks great. It's about an inch thick, a lot of glossy pages. But what you really have to understand is how are they going to make your pension plan money? Now, we also do some very critical things where we interview the references. Believe it or not, we had a project 2 years ago where a couple of firms submitted RFPs, and we went to check the references, and one particular respondent, all the references, the phone numbers were disconnected. We couldn't get a hold of them. Not smart when you're answering an RFP. So we do a tremendous amount of legwork on your behalf. Again, we will write the RFP. We're going to interview your pension committee to see what their concerns are, write the RFP, get it advertised, get it out. We'll show you a timeline as far as how long people should take to answer the RFP. We get the responses back. We go through them all. We then do all of the interviews as far as what they're asking for in the RFP. And we do an executive summary to save you and your staff literally hundreds of hours. So the other thing that I want to talk about is a lot of the do's and don'ts that we've seen as far as why are you issuing an RFP. Now, we think that this year is going to be a big year for issuing RFPs. Why do we think that? Well, we all know the last couple of years, nobody's really done anything. 2020, 2021 were really good in the investment markets. 2022 has been a disaster. The average defined benefit plan in the state of Pennsylvania is going to be down anywhere from 15 to as much as 20%. What's going to happen is in February and March, when you're doing your pension meetings, all of your pension committee members are going to say, we need to do something. We need to look at our advisor. We need to look at what else is out there. Now, one of the things that we really delineate is, what are you doing this for? Now, if you're doing it for cost, that's not a bad idea, but you got to be a little bit careful about going to the lowest cost provider. But having said that, we did do a project for a $50 million defined benefit plan 2 years ago and literally helped them take out about $50,000 a year in costs as far as what they had been doing to what they ended up doing after we did our RFP referee. But are you looking at performance? Now, again, this year, 2022, has been a disaster in the stock and bond market. And there's a lot of advisors out there, investment advisors, who really did not do well. And it'll become very apparent when you see the returns. Why do you want to change a provider? I mean, has a company changed ownership? If they do, you should immediately do an RFP, because many times this change in ownership of a pension provider signifies a change in some of their basic philosophy. The other thing you should do is to see what's out there. We were contacted a year ago by a small plan, $10 million plan, that literally hadn't looked at their defined benefit pension provider in 20 years. They had no idea what they were paying in costs, and they had no idea really what they're doing to. So the next thing that you want to do is, who do you want to respond to the RFP? We've seen a lot of bad RFPs in our day doing our RFP referee program. One response we got back, you could tell it was very sloppy. It was basically a cut and paste, and they literally had another township's name in that they had cut and pasted the RFP when they answered this particular township. So it was not good. There was a lot of times we've seen RFPs written by a township or borough solicitor. Don't do that. Borough and township solicitors are good at what they do. Some of them fancy themselves investment advisor consultants, or that they know what's going on in the defined benefit world. But I've seen some very poorly written RFPs that literally repeat the same question 3-4 times in the RFPs. The other thing is, you got to be careful about setting unrealistic parameters in your RFP. Many times we see RFPs that they're like, you need to have $1 billion in assets. You need to be 20 years in a business. Well, there are a lot of good consulting firms out there that are smaller. They may consult a 500 million to $1 billion. They may have been 10 years in the business. So you got to be careful who you exclude and who you don't exclude. Now, you also get a lot of pressure from local investment advisors. They may know somebody on the board and they're like, hey, I want a shot at the RFP. Well, what we do is we make sure that those people are qualified, and we show you if they are qualified or not qualified, so that you can go back to them and say, this is a reason why obviously you can't be involved in this process. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about is the blurring of lines between a true pension consultant that hires money managers, do due diligence on those managers, and provides you performance reports, and what we call OCIO, or outsourced CIO, Chief Investment Officer program. So a lot of the big consulting firms, what they've done over the last 20 years is they'll have clients, they'll have a municipality say, hey, we're not sophisticated enough. We don't know about asset allocation. You do it all for us. Well, if that's the case, these OCIOs are actually money managers and should be held to the same regards as an active money manager as far as what is their performance of their OCIO business. So how long do you want to take to respond to an RFP? We usually give companies 3 to 4 weeks to respond. Any longer than that, they all have people at their firms that are constantly answering RFPs. A week to 2 weeks is probably too short to respond. 3 to 4 weeks is good. How are you going to get the response back? Well, in the old days, you'd get a bunch of books thrown at you, but nowadays, electronically, typically we get one response per company, and we get that in electronic PDF form, and we think that's the way to go. So again, the benefits of our RFP referee program is, who's going to read all these responses? We do. We go through each and every response, and we make sure that they meet the technical aspects of the RFP that we'd helped write, and then make sure that they answered all the questions correctly. Now, what are you looking for in the responses? Now, this is where the one-on-one interviews that we do and the executive summary that we write up really helps you and your staff and your pension committee, because we give you an idea of what their investment process is, how qualified they are. Is it a one-man shop? Is it a investment committee? We really go through and try to figure out how they are making money, for their clients, and eventually potentially making money for you. Now, the other thing that happens is, depending upon the size of your plan, you may get a large number of responses. Typically, most RFP referee programs that we do, we see between 8 and 20 responses. If your plan is over $20 million, you will get upwards of 20 responses. If your plan is under 20 million, if it's like 10 million or so, you'll probably get 8 to 10, which is still a good number of responses of highly qualified companies that can run your defined benefit plan. So how do you get to the final four? So basically what we do in our process is once we reviewed all the RFPs and we write an executive summary, we do a review with the pension committee and say, here are the people that we think that you should interview. Now, you can always interview more people or less people. Typically, you should interview at least 3 to 4 providers. Interviewing 5 to 6 is probably too many and creates some interview fatigue when you get to the final people. But how do you make that decision? You go default to the lowest cost. We always don't think that's the right idea, but you heard they were good. The township next door, uses them and they're happy with them. But the question is that investment advisory firm really doing a good job? So there's a lot of work that goes into answering the RFPs, and from a professional courtesy standpoint, we make sure that if we're involved, we show why this particular company didn't make the final cut, and we let these people know because they do a lot of work answering these RFPs. So how do you make your final decision? Part of our RFP process that we do is that we will handle the in-person interviews. We'll actually come to your township, schedule the interviews, and then you and your staff and your pension committee can sit in on, obviously sit in on the interviews. We help with the questions to ask. We've seen some very interesting interviews. Sometimes interviews can make or break a company that wants your business, but many times they give you a good idea whether or not these people are qualified and what they're going to do. Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is, how are they going to make your pension fund money is what they're really going to end up doing. So that's why I want to talk about our RFP referee. If you're interested, my contact information is obviously on the first slide of this video. Reach out to me. Many times I have a township manager or borough manager or finance director reach out with some questions. I give them some pricing as far as what we charge, but really what we bring to the table is extreme amount of knowledge on how to issue an RFP for your pension services, what to look for on as far as the company's responding to it, and really who knows what they're doing and who really doesn't know what they're doing. Unfortunately, with the state of Pennsylvania and about 2,400 defined benefit pension plans, I feel that fully 30 to 40% of these pension plans are being handled by advisors that have really no idea what they're doing with the defined benefit pension plan. And unfortunately, in a bad year like 2022, that's really going to come out. You're going to see that in their performance. So hope you found some value out of this short video. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.